You don't remember? the conversation go where it will.
He's gonna make like the most subtle gesture possible.
Oh no,
And,
we've been live for a hot minute.
Happy
now.
hour.
No.
Welcome in, everyone.
You're not even in here yet.
We're not there yet. We are there. We're definitely online.
You're there. I was talking to MJ. I was talking to MJ.
I mean,
Where to start?
so we're semi-live.
Chaos. Total fucking chaos.
Yes, this is very representative of our channel. So please, if you enjoy some of this nonsense and this talk and characters popping in out of nowhere, hello, MJ.
Hi, I'm more anonymous now than I've ever been.
We are at Hit Points Not Required Happy Hour, where we talk a lot of nonsense. We enjoy some beverages, adult or otherwise, and we pop people in whenever we feel like it. And semi-live, semi-not live, everything goes here on Hit Points Not Required. How are you all doing?
Hopefully good. Hopefully good. Hopefully good.
Anything interesting happened in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah.
All right, off to another rip-roaring start. MJ, what interesting happened to you in the last couple of weeks?
Well, I'm figuring out quite a lot about my new situation here in Maryland. There's been a lot of things that have been happening here that kind of threw me for a loop. One of which was a surprising amount of like protests and various other things that are really awesome. That's really cool. Myself being very active. So I like that sort of thing, you know? That's always exciting for me, honestly, is to see people actually getting up and regardless of what it is, like standing up for your beliefs and going out and doing something very positive or what you believe to be positive, doing something hopefully for your community. So, you know, that's always a positive, I think.
I was waiting for a comma but in there somewhere. It really felt like it was leading to somewhere. But no, that's great. That's great to go and stand up for the causes and do a few things and be heard. That is the hopeful part of that.
Absolutely.
Very good. Very good.
How about everybody else?
Violet, anything?
I started a new D&D campaign last
Yay!
week.
Did it have anything to do with oceans and pirates?
Oh, it sure did, in fact.
Wow.
We have both oceaned and pirated, I think. Or at least begun to do so.
Session 1 mutiny is all I have to say.
That's
off to a raring start. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, you know, Rook and I just started playing in an off-stream campaign with Jacob, our frequent tail weaver on this channel, and yeah, it's off to a wonderful start. It's a great group. I think it's super fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Excellent. I can't wait to hear more about it and see how that differed from my personal adventures along those same semi-charted waters previously, because I very much enjoyed playing in that world, in that setting, and with Jacob at the helm. It's always a fantastic time. And compare what my group did. I don't want to say incorrectly, but questionably.
Now I need the story.
Oh, we're making questionable choices right out the fucking gate, let me tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, but you're making choices. That's
you
all
never know. The Dragonborn might not drop a dime on us. Who knows?
Dragonborn might not get a chance, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
It's always the Dragonborn, isn't it? Always. Every time. I'll tell you. Oh. Well, that sounds fantastic, and we will probably try and keep the audience updated on shenanigans and how this mutiny, questionable proposed mutiny is the way I understand it, how that turns out. Yeah, until then, probably try and keep stuff under wraps a little bit. We don't want to expose too much of this campaign because you know what? You people listening at home can also go on Start Playing and look up Jacob as a DM and see when else he may be running this campaign or something similar and get yourself in for all of the fun and action.
You too can murder the captain in episode 1.5.
He's going to get killed off screen? Is that what's going to happen? You're going to come in? Hey, well, we're starting up episode 2, and here's the recap of what happened in between episodes 1.
In our downtime, we murdered the captain.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. I'm sure we will.
It's not my fault he put me in the brig. It's not my fault. I didn't mutiny. Not my captain.
Did you write a backstory where that was a conceivable possibility?
Yes.
Okay, I rest my case. Oh, well, I am freshly back from London.
Yeah.
It was an exciting and fun and wonderful time. I will tell you as a follow-up, and we'll see how much we could get to into recanting my amazing 60 hours in London. But as a follow-up from the last time, we were talking about paperwork that had to be filled out and questionnaires involving whether or not anyone had ever been accused of war crimes. I made a lot of fun of this topic. However, I will say that the robots running customs were much more efficient and effective because of the questionnaire and having that filled out ahead of time. So much so that it was basically barely even having to, I don't know if I fully stopped, slow down long enough to slap my passport down on a reader, look at a camera, the doors open, and you're welcome to London with no humans involved.
Interesting.
Now, all because I had not committed war crimes. If I had committed war crimes,
you would have to go to a much longer line, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a different line for that.
Yeah.
It might still have been robots, but it might have been
entirely different robots.
I mean, it was that was the first time I've gone through customs anywhere that I can ever remember where no humans were involved. There was no humans anywhere. It was just slap down your passport, look at the screen, gates open. Nothing.
I have such mixed feelings about things like that.
Right.
On the one hand, it's like, you know, automation, like displacing people's jobs and things like that. But on the other hand, I hate interacting with people. So like I love automatic checkout, like self-checkout. I'm so happy, like when I need to, like something that I have to do, like running an errand or something like that, or even, you know, going through customs at the airport. It's like not something you want to do. You just have to. Just being able to just get it done and not have to deal with other people is I really enjoy that. So I have mixed feelings.
I mean, I have mixed feelings too, but it's a little different. I mean, yes, displacing someone's job, but is that the job anybody really wants to do anyway? That's the job we want robots doing so that we could pursue careers in art and music and things like that, right?
Well, yes, but we don't have the other structures in place to make that realistic. That is not what's happening to the people who are displaced from those jobs.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying just in general robot theory.
Yes. In theory, but that would also require some kind of larger social system to support people, whether they have those jobs or not, so they could do other things that they want to do. But that's not the way things work. So, oh well.
But I mean, that I think that's a very important thing in talking about and dealing with AI and thinking about it every time you use it, right? Oh yeah, let me just go and use AI to create a character portrait for that tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people doing TTRPGs without a nary a thought that, hey, we could be supporting someone and helping someone get their job. But
people need to have jobs, whether they want them or not, so that they can live. So it is important to support people having jobs
Yeah.
until we have a better system.
And hopefully live comfortably too. That's kind of one of the big struggles is like minimum wage to like a comfortable wage. It's hard to find things that are not just like a nice job that, you know, fits for the person, fits for what they want to do, but also pays the right amount and is livable and comfortable.
Yeah.
So it's trying to find that good balance.
There are definitely challenges as we head into a robot future that I hope our robot overlords will think about and take care of when they are properly setting up society.
Always make sure you thank Alexa every time. Just be like, hey, thank you so much for playing that. I appreciate you. Please keep me in mind. We're pros,
keep
right?
me on your good list. Yeah.
The thing though is I'm a little more worried that we don't have a human, we don't have anything but a robot checking a passport and letting us in for custom. That seems like a job where I would want a human person.
Maybe.
Although I'll say, flashing forward to the very end of my trip, returning, the US is all still humans manning customs, except for folk like me that are on global entry, already done interviews and gotten acknowledged that I have not committed war crimes by the United States government.
As far as they know.
Very similar. Don't help me, man.
Don't make accusations. That's the problem. You can't accuse him. Then he won't be able to go again.
As far as that went, there's a special bank, much smaller bank. There's only the couple of people that go through, get a look at the screen. It recognizes us. Okay, go to the next checkpoint where there's a human that's standing there saying, did you bring anything? No? Okay, get the hell out of here. Don't know how much better that is, but you have to actually look at a person. And if you're going to lie, which I did not do because I didn't bring anything, but look at that person and lie to their face. Right? It's easy to lie to a machine, right? And who cares about lying to a freaking machine? But a human, you know, you would have to look at them and lie. I would think that would be just a touch harder. You know?
Yeah, it's true.
Everyone, if you're in the Atlanta area and needing to film some TTRPG related stuff, check out Do You Validate Studios. They are the production team for the House of Ill Repute, which should be coming out soon. And they are here in the channel with us now.
Hey, welcome to You Validate. Woo! That is fantastic. Good to know that they're hanging out, and it is a fantastic studio, huge sound stage, green screen stuff, lots of cameras, even a special table set up just for recording TTRPGs that can be included in your package when you are making your recordings.
That's so cool.
The table of emotional vulnerability.
That joke will hit a lot harder once our show comes out.
Can't wait. Can't wait.
Just does something when people sit around that table. Just
yeah.
But we had so much fun filming at that studio. Like it was a great time. You know, hopefully you will all see that in the performance and how much everyone enjoyed doing it when Ill Repute comes out. But yeah, it was a great time.
It's glorious.
Speaking of the house, we do have a tradition here on our happy hours where a group of people always gets to drink gratis. And today, in honor of just having gone on a couple of international flights, I think anyone that has had or will have had the experience of flying in the middle row in coach on an international flight, step on up to the bar and grab yourself something tasty because you drink on the house.
Speaking of flying, how does everybody feel about flying?
I love
I'm just
flying.
curious. You love flying? Big flyer? I mean, obviously, you just did a whole international trip, so you seem to not be have too much of an aversion. So,
in general, I really like it. I like flying. I get a little nervous during like takeoff and landing, but like for the most part, I really like flying as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Rook? How do you feel?
I mean, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I think the most annoying thing about flying to me is like when I make the trip down to Atlanta, which I do, reasonably frequently, I would say, to do the studio experience, things like that. It's just tough to justify flying instead of driving for me because I don't want to sit middle row on coach.
There it
Even
is.
if you get a free beverage?
But you have to get there so early, and then by the time you get through all of the process and then rent a car, all of those things, it's maybe 2 hours more for me to drive instead and have my vehicle there, to utilize as needed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
I would offer a counter argument, sir. What if you didn't rent a car? What if there was no car rental portion of that? That cuts down on some of the time, and instead of having driven those hours, you sat in a seat, had a few beverages, read a book, and you're much less exhausted from doing all of the work of driving when you arrive at your destination. I am a big non-car person. I don't have a car here anymore. I go to most of the places I go to. I don't rent a car. I'll just Uber if and when I need to go one place or another place or do something like that. So
yeah,
just putting that out there.
I think being a non-car person changes the perspective so much. Like I not only do I not have a car, I've never had a car. I've never had a driver's license in my life. So
that seems rare.
Yeah. I mean, I
to be fair, her trash people ride bicycles.
The trash gets picked up on bikes. That is a fact.
Okay.
But I lived most of my life in a place with like very robust public transportation. So it was like really not an issue. But that's the thing too, is like for my whole life, like waiting for buses and trains and working around schedules and stuff like that, that's just how I get everywhere. So it doesn't really faze me. I don't really even think about that so much, like dealing with that aspect of flight, or whatever. Like that's just how I get everywhere. I also like airports, which like I feel like everyone thinks is weird. Like most people don't like airports, but like when I was a kid, my mom worked in an airport for a while, and sometimes we would go like with my dad to pick her up from work like at night, and it was like very exciting to be going out and like into the city to the airport at night, and we would like ride the escalator up and down, and it was fun. Like it was just like it seemed like a fun place when I was a little kid, so I just like have fondness for airports now.
Kind of a nostalgia.
Yeah.
To answer your question, Chuck, I would say it would be much harder of a decision to make every time if I were still in Louisville as opposed to an hour from Louisville. So having to drive an hour to the airport just to get that whole process started, as opposed to being an hour closer to Atlanta. Or I guess maybe 45 minutes closer to Atlanta, something like that. So that makes the decision a whole lot easier to make, right? It's just like, I'm already part of the way there. Let's just go.
What about you,
Jay?
Sure. Absolutely. Huge fan of flying. Always have been. I remember my first flight as a kid going down to Florida from New York, and I was terrified. And then we landed, and I realized I shouldn't have been so terrified. That was amazing. And the air stewardess who kept me company because I was so nervous, she was really great. The whole experience was great. And ever since, I've had a massive fondness, and just I enjoy it. In fact, to the point where if I could afford to, I would love to get my pilot's license, and I would love to.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we can work that and make that happen, we will make you the official pilot of Bitcoin Not Required.
Yeah, get my wings. A goal of mine, a personal goal of mine, is
Very
if I
cool.
can ever just once fly a P-51 Mustang for like 5 seconds. I don't care. Just I'm set. I'm good. That'd be my dream come true.
Yeah, I support you in your pursuit of that dream.
Sure.
That's a good dream. That seems like a semi-achievable one.
We're only a few dollars away from being able to financially support you achieving your dream, MJ. We're right on the cusp.
Yeah,
only
I'm
a certain number of dollars, a certain few subscribers to our Patreon away. That should be.
Yeah.
We might be adding another level now to Patreon.
Contribute
to 10,000 a month. And you too, after 24 to 48 months of straight subscriptions, can get a personal flight with MJ as your pilot.
That'd be I'd fly everybody. By all means, that'd be fun. You want to do loop-de-loops?
You would kind of have to if we gave you a plane, right?
Yeah, I think I'd be contractually obligated.
Yeah.
So funny story.
Uh-huh.
I sold a house once to someone that had a hangar. It didn't have a garage. It had a hangar. It was kind of crazy. It was a grass airstrip that was part of a like retired pilots probably built this subdivision or whatever, right? And the house in particular that I sold was a home that was right on the airstrip and had an actual hangar. And we had to, it was funny because when the home inspector went to inspect the house, he was like, well, this is a first. I've never inspected a hangar before. Let's see how this goes. He's like, I mean, it had like a fuel, like a gas pump and everything out. I mean, it was a little strange.
Was the property big enough that little airstrip, was that actually long enough for like a Cessna or a small plane to take off, or was this really where they brought their plane and stored it and then like hooked it up to
no, it was an active airstrip that was used frequently by all these guys that had their own like Cessnas and things like that, right? And ironically, the person that bought this plane lived in Key West and was an airline stewardess. And that was how we made the financing possible for the whole thing, because we called it a primary residence because they couldn't afford a place in Key West, obviously, because that's, crazy money.
They could afford a Cessna. But they couldn't afford.
No, they didn't have a plane. They didn't have a plane.
They just had the hangar and people would visit them.
They specifically wanted to look at this house for no reason. Not like it had nothing to do with having a plane.
Just
However,
total coincidence.
Totally coincidental. They were a stewardess, so we could justify it as a primary residence, even though they were based out of Key West, because they had access to pilots that could fly them to their home.
That's
cool.
So wild.
Isn't that crazy? That's a weird story, right?
Yeah.
Super cool, though.
Yeah, it was interesting.
I have an aunt who was a flight attendant for many, 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 many years, and she traveled all over the world for a long time. She didn't really have like a main place of residence. Yeah, she would like crash with people or, with family or friends whenever she stayed in one place for a while. But mostly she was just traveled around all the time. Like it's a real interesting way to live.
The homeless flight attendant. That does sound like some form of novel somewhere. Solving crime, wherever they happen to land.
Stewardess by day, crime fighter by night.
Yes. I've flown so many miles and listened to so many true crime podcasts.
Yeah,
not a problem. Yeah.
Fly noir.
Anna Kendrick is the attendant.
Yeah, we're going to start a new genre here.
Oh my! I love it. Just some like super film noir introduction, like on a
Mhm.
plane. It's like described as smoky, like back in the 50s. It's like I was
Oh.
flying in, whatever. I don't know.
And Jason Statham, of course, is the pilot.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Mhm, mhm.
I want this done by the guy who did Spirit and all those other like black and white modern movies where they just highlight like one color.
Mm.
I can't remember who that was. Heck, but it was like, I don't know. It was really cool though. Just that that like almost film noir actiony style. I think that would be
Yes.
amazing for that sort of genre.
That sort of genre that we are just now
Yes.
creating.
Hey, we have an idea. That's how everything gets started.
Speaking of travel, though, another thing on the trip that I thought was interesting, since the last time I was in London, they have upgraded, and I believe some of the major cities, New York, Boston, all that, operate like this as well. Atlanta is a little behind the curve, but when you go to get on the underground, the tube, as it were,
Mind the gap.
you can, you still have to mind the gap, so that has not changed. But you now it's contactless payment, so you don't need anything.
Yes.
You don't need to just watch or a smart device on the thing. Doors open, good to go. Doesn't matter. You don't need to have signed up for a card. You don't need to have downloaded a special app. It just recognizes whatever you've got tied to your payment thing, charges you whatever they feel is appropriate. Sometimes notifies you, and then you scan it again when you get off, and you don't have to worry about anything, which was so much nicer than pre-pandemic London, when I had to get an Oyster card and deal with how much was on my card and what the trip was and all of this nonsense. So I really,
Does anyone know why they call it that?
why is it called what, a Charlie card in Boston?
There's reasons.
I mean, it's all the same stuff.
Yeah.
It's all back in back lore and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But Charlie couldn't get off of that train.
Yep.
But
Wild concept that you used to have to pay to get off the train.
Well, you still do. You still do. Like, okay, so it depends on where it is, but so London, it's based on zones, right? How long and what zone
Yeah,
you go to.
I
So
understand the concept.
yeah, charges you for zone 1 when you get on, and then figures out what the balance is when you get off, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not free
Yeah,
to
I
ride as
think
long as
there
the line goes.
were some parts of the MBTA that were still doing that in my experience, but not anymore.
Well, yeah, that's like a lot of the US ones are one charge. You get on and then make as many changes wherever you get off. But London is still zone based.
New York, you get one change onto the bus as well, right? So I think
like a free transfer, yeah.
Right, you get one free transfer onto a bus, because in New York, most of the things go kind of like north and south, and then the subway lines go north and south, and then the buses go east and west.
Yeah.
So most of those, your fee includes a bus transfer if you.
Yeah, I think Boston does that too with the free transfer, but it's time limited. Obviously, it's like you have to swipe the same thing within X amount of time, or whatever. But
yeah, just so it's the same trip. They want you. We'll make one trip easy for you, but we don't want you going multiple trips. But
yeah, fun fact.
How fun is it?
Not that fun, but Massachusetts just made buses free, not on the MBTA, but in other parts of Massachusetts, because God forbid you mess with the MBTA. But other systems throughout Massachusetts have free buses now.
Huh?
It's like all state sponsored, so I can take where I am, which is not in the Boston area anymore. I can take the bus wherever I want for free all the time.
Yep, as long as they still have human drivers and they haven't gone.
They certainly do. They certainly do.
We have not gotten there yet.
They put all the humans on the rickshaws.
On the bikes. They're all picking up the trash on the bikes.
Yes. I will say a couple more details of London before we get into an actual topic here. Shout out to the Arcanists Tavern, a TTRPG, a board game and TTRPG centric tavern that I came across in London with the Indie Meat Group, the London Indie Meat Group, had a Dungeons and Dragons or a TTRPG afternoon there that I crashed and role played a little bit, talked to some people, had a good time. The establishment itself very nice, though. They have some private tables, curtain drawn private tables, not door closed private tables, but still
semi-private rooms.
Yeah,
That's
where
pretty cool.
you can host your private game or a party. The owner said they do a lot of parties and stuff there, and then they got a central game room where they've got like 6 tables set up, and you can reserve those, and they're reserved pretty far out. Those things are pretty well reserved. There's a full bar, food, some other tables and board games and stuff there as well. So I recommend, if you are in London, pop by the Arcanist Tavern. And if it happens to be the 3rd Saturday of a given month, there will probably be a TTRPG group hanging out there, and you can role play a little bit. So shout out to them. I did that right before I did the VR/immersive War of the Worlds experience, where we got to go through and dodge some laser beams and take boat rides, jump through windows, go down slides. That was a bunch of fun. I recommend that as well. And also, last shout out will be to the Karma Sanctum Soho Hotel. Fantastic establishment that happens to have a Dalek guarding the public bathroom. Did not know about that before. Did not know about that before I went, but hey, exterminate or come up with something else that begins with E that goes along with that statement. That's up to you. I will leave your imagination where it will. However, the real reason I went to London was to see the original Broadway cast of Hadestown, and they were amazing. I've seen that show many times now. Love that show. But the chemistry that this cast has is absolutely top shelf. Y'all should check out the Pro Shot when it comes out. But for those of you who are not familiar, Hadestown is a story of Eurydice and Orpheus and Hades and Persephone, and it is essentially, while a tragedy, still a love story.
Oh, there we go. There's the transition. I was waiting for it.
So smooth. That segue was fantastic.
That's what you pay me for. And tonight we will be talking about romance in TTRPGs and what that means to everybody. How
romance in semi-private rooms at the Arcane Tavern, the Arcanist Tavern. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to reserve a room, you're more than welcome.
It's only a curtain, all right?
And it is by the hour. So,
well, there you go.
With that said, I think it is in fact a big topic, and one that is a little difficult to navigate. And because of that, a lot of tables I see are just no romance. We're not doing any of that. We don't want any of that. But I'm interested in opinions of people here. And there's a lot of segments that we can break this down later on, this or that, here or there, where it is okay here, be more cautious there. But just in general, how do y'all pursue and or regulate romance at your tables?
Let me just start by saying the first thing I do when I start a campaign is part of my campaign process is to give players a list as opposed to the 3 pillars of D&D, right? The exploration, combat, and role play. I give them a list of 7 topics. Those topics include those 3 pillars: combat, roleplay, exploration. They also include mystery, puzzles, politics, and romance. Those are the topics. And I ask every player at the table to give the highest number to the thing that they want to see the most and the lowest number to the thing they want to see the least. And then I tally all of that to determine what kind of flavor the campaign is going to be. And almost universally, those main three pillars end up towards the top. However, it helps me determine, do these people want romance in this campaign? Do they want politics in the campaign? Do they want mystery? So that's the first approach that I use to determine reading the room with my players and what kind of romance options might be out there. And then we go forward from there with many of the other things we're undoubtedly going to talk about today.
Okay.
Yeah, because there are really so many different aspects of this and like ways to talk about it. For sure, without a doubt, like romance should be a part of the session 0 conversation always, without exception. Like it should be addressed on some level, how people feel about it. If there are people who are just like, I just really do not want that at all in my game, I don't want to be involved in it, because it can be a very sensitive thing for people to role play, and people can be really uncomfortable with that, and that's totally valid and important to know. So the first thing I think, and most important thing about romance in TTRPGs, is like, you should be talking about it in your session 0. If you're not, you have to be.
And more importantly, don't ever spring that on someone in your game without talking to them individually beforehand,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
Like, don't just be a creeper and do X, Y, or Z with a player not having any knowledge that that's coming. Regardless of how other interactions player to player have been. And that includes your DM too. Your DM is just as sensitive as any other person at the table and deserves just as much respect. Do
For
not
sure,
just try to horn dog in on an NPC.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to something we talked about last time, I think. The idea that like the DM is also a player at the table. That, you know, even if they're a paid DM, they're still a human person who is sitting at that table with you.
Well, if they're paid, I mean, a little bit less.
They have, you know, while on the one hand, the DM definitely has a lot more power to guide where things are going, to sort of accommodate their own boundaries as needed, the players still need to be cognizant of that as well. And romance is definitely one of those places too. So that's something I think that might sometimes get overlooked in session 0s also, is for the DM to express their feelings about, you know, romance with NPCs and stuff like that. Because often, you know, the DM's stuff gets overlooked. But yeah.
MJ, do you have overview thoughts on the topic?
I mean, I agree with a lot of what's been said so far. I also think that to just compound, like that is a common thing that DMs sometimes get overlooked, or just, you know, people just automatically assume, well, if they're asking these questions, they've already considered it. Well, it still should be in the discussion. That should absolutely be session 0 topic. But my personal views on it are always discuss it with your players, always have the players discuss. If you are planning on doing something, like you think like maybe there's some sort of chemistry, like even if it's 100% okayed at the table, everybody agrees to it. Still, if you have a character and there's some chemistry between your two characters, maybe between sessions, say, hey,
yes,
this is happening, I'm thinking about doing this. Is this okay with you? If it's not, that's totally acceptable. Like, have those discussions, because you don't want to just spring it on the player either, where, you know, your barbarian and your sorcerer are really connecting, and then the barbarian goes, hey, I kind of like you, and then the player doesn't know how to take that. Even if it's okay, it may not be in that moment something they're prepared for. It may blindside, etc. So those sorts of discussions should happen in between.
And it's such a subjective thing too. Like, it's very easy for one person to be like, oh, these characters are like so obviously vibing, like this is just the natural direction for them. But the person playing that other character might not feel that way at all. Like, it's very easy, especially in role play, to like misinterpret things like that, I think.
Well, that's happened to me.
I think that begs the question of, what is romance in your TTRPGs? Where would you describe that, and how would you and how would you define those
That's where it gets complicated.
right?
Like, I feel like all the things we're saying sound nice and simple and clean and easy to be like, talk about it during your session 1, check in with people and all that. But the reality of it gets a lot more messy. Like, at what point do you cross that line from your characters just get along really well to something's going on there? And how do you identify that point? Like, when is it time to check in with the other player? I think that can be kind of tricky.
Yeah. And I think, and I think it could vary from setting to setting, from group to group, from everything about that. And I think it's one of those lines and veils that when you discuss during your session 0, you also have to discuss that it's kind of not black and white. It is kind of murky, and there will be times during there may be times, probably depending on how long the campaign were to go, where we'll need to check in and redefine what we're defining and where we're defining romance. And I think in particular, there's a big difference because, and I'll put this out there. It'll be leading into the first thing that I wanted to ask about, the difference between, in general, a one-shot and a campaign where you're viewing romance. But I was had a conversation with the creator of the Deck of Player Safety not too long ago. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this, it's basically like a deck of cards, and there's a number of different things in there that could possibly be lines or veils, and you pull out the ones that are yours, submit them blind. DM, basically shuffles the cards, and then it's like, okay, here's the things we're not doing because people have done that. And they mentioned that they were talking to somebody. I don't remember, was they themselves or somebody else had run a campaign, and somebody had put in the romance card. We're not having romance in there, and discovered later that the person who submitted that card expressly because they didn't want somebody that might be playing a bard. They didn't know there was a bard, and this was before they even knew characters and all that. But just on the off chance that there was a bard in there, they were tired of the trope of the bard trying to seduce and sleep with everything. So throw the romance card. And I get it. And especially if it's a one shot in a public thing or whatever, great, throw it away. But I think it also takes away the possibility for some fantastic, interesting role play and some things that are there just because you're afraid of a trope and defining romance as that trope, right? I personally don't define what that particular person wanting to play that trope of that bard as romance. I'm not really.
Yeah, I wouldn't really have thought of that as what that. I don't know. I wouldn't have connected those two things.
I think maybe there needs to be a further definition of romance and creepy shit, and we want creepy shit not in the game.
Romance is fine. Being a fucking creep is not.
No.
And again, where the line is, where with that being humorous and with that stuff being creepy, it again is a little murky depending upon the group. I think it normally tends toward creepy, but there's some, it can be amusing if done properly. But that said, do you feel there's a difference if you're in a one shot, and we could further define that later on, or if it makes a difference in your opinion here, a one shot that's done online with a group of people that you've never met, a one shot that's done in person at a convention, because I think that makes it one shot online, you probably can shut off and never going to see the person again. One shot at a convention, you may be walking around and running into these people later, and if you're not interested in what they're selling and what they could potentially be meaning in overtones of romance, that could make a difference. But
if you're creeping on somebody at a one shot at a convention, fuck you, man. Like, fuck that. Fuck you.
That is,
and I guarantee there are people doing that.
That's my point. Well, somebody getting, so I think about it more along the lines of somebody getting the wrong idea by what you're doing as role play and thinking it means you want X after the role play is done and
Something
where
more.
that could end up, right?
The bleed issue where people don't have appropriate boundaries between the player and the character.
Yep.
Which honestly, fair enough. Like, there's always going to be some degree of, like, when you're trying to get into the head of your character, like there's always a little bit, and that's why things like this are tricky, and why some people, even though they may be fantastic role players, may still not be comfortable role playing romance or other things. You know, there may be things that they're just not comfortable doing as a person.
Sure.
But in general, I feel like if you're talking, I would be so much more inclined to be like romance off the table with a group of players that I don't really know, because I just feel like it's not worth the effort. Like, especially if it's a one shot,
it's a one shot. The juice
like,
isn't
I'm
even
not
worth the squeeze. Like, it doesn't
I'm not
matter.
gonna sit there and have this long conversation about like appropriate romantic boundaries with some fucking stranger to play a one shot. Like, let's just not do it. We don't need it. It's not important. Who cares? So, like, in a situation like that, let's just take it off the table and not deal with it. Campaigns are real different. I feel like, especially a long running campaign, I feel like it's real important to talk about these things because they will almost definitely come up, because you've got, like,
over the course
characters.
of a long campaign, there's characters that are together all the time. There's
Yes.
NPCs that you interact with over and over again. You're going to form attachments and opinions of all of these people and things. And it, in my experience at least, it comes up in almost every long campaign
in
some way or another, whether it's with NPCs or inner romance between PCs.
Yeah, because you have, again, exactly like you said, you have all these people spending all this time together. They're going through like extreme situations, emotional situations, distressing situations, you know, going through so much together. Like, it's almost inevitable that it's going to come up somewhere in a long campaign, and there it is 100% worth having that conversation. If you as a person, as a player, are going to be spending all that time with these people, it's totally worth having the necessary conversations to like deal with that. But yeah, like a one shot, especially a one shot with people I don't know, I can't be bothered. I just can't be bothered.
It's not worth having at the table at that point. Like, you're there for such a short amount of time. There's not enough time to build much, if anything. Like, if it's a very specific situation and that may be like a weird focus to it, I don't know, like Valentine's Day or something, whatever. And they're like, oh, well, we kind of want to do this like dating sim like thing. Like, okay, maybe you can dabble with it.
And if it's a one shot with people you know really well, also, then it can fly just fine. Like, if you know those people, you've played together a lot before, you know how they're going to come at it, like, you have some sense of each other's boundaries, then why not? Go for it. But yeah, with strangers, no thanks.
I mean, I think the key point there, in my opinion, in my experience, is people that know each other, right? If you know each other really well, one shot doesn't matter as much. If you don't know, especially in an in-person setting, I think in a virtual setting, you know, it's a big difference than you're actually physically sitting at a table and you're going to be in an area, a convention type thing where you're going to be near people for a while. But I think it makes it a lot easier if you know the people, and to have a one shot and have a little flirting going on, little flirtatious thing. I think that's normal stuff that can come up in a one shot. You're not going to have the deep romance, but flirting is definitely in the romance category. Creepy shit is in its other category. But flirting and a little flirtatious behavior, I think can be fine. But you do need to talk about that and make sure and read context clues.
Yeah, read the room. Don't flirt with people that don't want to be flirted with. Don't be a fucking jerk. Fuck you, right?
But that's another thing.
No
flirting with Rook.
That's another thing, is like, also,
unless
like,
you're MJ, because I'm in. See,
Wherever,
don't do that. Don't spring shit on people like that. Don't do it. It's awkward. It's not right.
I think he just wants a free play.
No, I'll flirt with anybody. No, so
Cheers.
I'm actually I have like no comfortable, like no bubble. I'm very easy to get along. No, but consent, things like that can all be revoked and changed and etc.
Yes, for
at
sure.
any point in time. So at any point in the future, even if it was okay at the beginning, if it's not anymore, you can still have that discussion and say, actually, guys, this is really not vibing with me. I'm not enjoying this. Can we not do this anymore? And that's something you can do.
Well, and I think you can go the other way too, right? Especially in a campaign.
Yeah.
I think this segues nicely into my next thing on my list, which was frequent check-ins, right? I think session 0 stuff in general, there should be check-ins. But if you had a session 0 and you're like, oh, we don't want any romance in this campaign, we'd rather not have any of that. And then you're 3 months in, 6 months in, a year in, and and the situation's going on. Hey, maybe we have another session 0 and say, hey, we want to revisit some of this stuff. Is it okay? Or have we changed our mind? Are we more comfortable with each other now that we've known each other for a while? That sort of stuff. I think
are we less comfortable with each other?
Yeah.
Now that
Are we
we've
less
known each
comfortable?
other
Yeah.
for a while?
But things
either way.
can very much change. And not even just among the players too. Sometimes it's just about the characters. Like I've definitely gone into games where I started it thinking there's no way this character is going to get involved in romance. Like it just doesn't make sense for them and like who they are and whatever. But then like things happened and they like interacted with other characters in ways that I didn't really expect, and things and it started to look like actually that would really make sense for them. I wouldn't have thought it, but here it is. Like things can definitely change both as a player and for the characters.
I think, and like I said, it not just in the romance spectrum, but in just about everything that you go over in a session 0, it is worth revisiting and having planned check-ins and revisitations for those things for your safety.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I want to bring up about this topic is a little bit more timely with this. And does the system matter? In particular, we've recently been, and spoiler alert, maybe playing one more coming up soon. Kids on Bikes. And when you're playing characters that are children underage, is romance itself defined differently, and or should there be different rules and regulations placed on that? And does that make a difference if it's people you know, people you don't know, a public setting, private setting, all of that?
Let me ask this question for the second Kids on Bikes, the Chillingham Castle, whatever it was romance off the
never going back
completely
again. 0
for
stars.
that one too? I didn't read the lines and veils for that.
It was yes.
So don't read the lines and veils. Who cares?
I wasn't playing.
Well, he wasn't playing though. Yeah.
I don't read the lines and veils often. I happened to read the first Kids on Bikes one. I don't even know why, because I was sitting at my computer when it came out. But if I'm not playing, it's my responsibility to not be a fucking creeper in the background, right? Like that's all that's where my thing starts and stops.
Yeah, well, we probably should finish the initial question first, but that's another question that I would have. Does it matter, like if you've got other people that are helping out, if you've got somebody that is helping out with food, helping out catering, if somebody that's doing production on the channel, should their lines and veils be considered in with everybody else's because they are nearby, they're involved in the project, and we shouldn't be triggering them or offending them with anything as well? But that is a topic possibly for another show.
That's a whole other. I think
possibly for later on. But yeah, right now does the system matter?
So with the Kids on Bikes thing, I think again, I feel like the players and the players' interactions matter more. If we're playing Kids on Bikes and somebody wants to be Andy and somebody wants to be, I don't know, what's the name of the guy in Goonies, the older guy, the older brother? I don't even remember his name. I remember Andy because it's like, Andy, you fucking Goonie, or whatever they say, right? But can there be a boyfriend and a girlfriend in a Kids on Bikes game? I think there absolutely can. But does anybody want to be party to listening to them talking about making out in their car in the high school parking lot? Probably not, right? Like,
No.
Well, I mean, here my question to that. I think you need to define as a group what romance looks like to this age group. And B, are you going to reference that, hey, no, we couldn't have seen that, we were making out in the car, or are you going to go into detail?
I think therein lies the problem to me, is with Kids on Bikes in particular, and I'm going to contrast that with another example in a minute, but you know, I think when you have a bunch of players who are adults, it can be very difficult to separate yourself enough to play, you know, romance that is appropriate for a child or a minor character, and to not let your adult brain take over. I think that it can be a very difficult, like, you know, what is appropriate for that age. Like, it can be hard to make those determinations, especially in the moment as things are happening. You know, something might seem super normal and fine to your adult brain, but like, you are, you know, but if a viewer might take it differently, if they are thinking of it as a child, I think it gets messy too easily, and it in general is better avoided. Obviously there can be exceptions, of course, if you're playing with people you know really well, if it's not necessarily something that's like being like streamed or broadcast, it's just a home game that's more chill, like obviously you can be more flexible, but I do think it's something that warrants some caution and some extra consideration. The example I would like to contrast with is Monster Hearts, a game that's all about teen sexuality. Like that, like literally there, like sex is part of the mechanics of the game. And there are a lot of like safety tools around that and things like that. But the thing is, so that's something I think of when you say, like, does the system matter? I think in some ways it does, because like a game like Monster Hearts, because it's very deliberately engaging with that, it has structure around that, and it gives you tools for managing that and that sort of thing. But more than that, it's not really as much about the system accommodating it as if you are sitting down with a group to play Monster Hearts, like, you know what you're fucking in for. Like, you know what you're signing on to. You know what I mean? And if everyone is signing on to like, yes, this is something I'm interested in playing, I want to explore this, I want to do this, and I feel comfortable like trying this out with this group of people, then that's one thing. But when people sit down to a game of Kids on Bikes, I feel like that is not what people necessarily, unless it's laid out at the beginning, that's not really what people are expecting. So I think it has a lot to do with expectations and intentions of the game, and like, what is the focus of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, in a lot of senses, the system does matter. It is basically what we're getting at. The system, the setting in particular, may matter as well. There's a lot of other factors that matter, but I also think, depending upon your time frame, depending upon what you've got going on, if how much of that discussion you want to have up front. Just like in that previous example where it's just, I'm just going to throw the romance card because I don't want this one trope being played by anybody. I'm just going to throw the non-romance. I have
like so many issues with that example. Like, what the fuck?
I know. I roll my eyes at it when I heard it too. But but once it's the sort of the problem, and the problem I'm getting at is here is once the card is thrown, that's it. You're done, right?
Yeah,
if that's what you're doing.
It's a little too simplistic. Yeah.
Right. And I think the same thing, without having a discussion and just saying romance is out of Kids on Bikes, it eliminates the, well, did you want to go to Sam Goody's? You want to go to the mall afterwards, right? That is, you can't be there. There is a level of.
I feel like we've talked about this a little bit, and like, to me, that wouldn't even occur to me that would be considered romance. So I would not imagine that to be.
That's what I'm saying.
But that's the point. Is
when we fill out our lines and veils, romance is a whole category that's broken down into like a dozen items, right?
Yes.
Well, that's important.
Yes, but no. That those items are it's like a dozen items. 4 of them are who, between whom and whom, and
Yeah.
like 3 of them are how explicit do you want sexual activities.
Well, it divides sex
Right,
and
but
romance
it
into 2
divides
separate
sex and
categories.
romance
So
first
you
and
can say
foremost.
no to any kind of sexual content, but yes to romance. Like you can make that distinction, and then it sort of breaks down to like, you know, with NPCs, with other PCs, whether it involves you or it just involves other people and that sort of thing. But it does at least get some more nuance in there.
Yeah.
There's a little more nuance than just black and white, but I
Yeah.
think for certain systems, you may want to be more specific at an actual session 0 face to face,
Yes.
talking about romance and what that might mean
Yes.
in this setting with this type of character. And these things are okay, and these things are not okay, and have examples of both.
Yes.
If you want to, it is way easier on everybody just to say no, and we're throwing the card and nothing is
Well,
going to happen.
For a one shot, it is. For
Yeah.
a campaign, I think it's, as I said before, I think it's worth having the conversation. If I was playing a long-term campaign of kids on bikes, I would want to have that conversation of like, what does that mean?
Yeah,
if like
because
these kids have like crushes on each other or whatever, like what
every
does that look
coming
like?
of age story and movie
Yeah.
has those things in it. Like, but that does beg the question, touching back on what you just talked about, Violet, as an adult, is your view of child romance different or colored or skewed in some way? It really made me think about things like Stranger Things or Wednesday. You know, some of the teen Harry Potter, even some of the teen romance shows that, or I shouldn't say romance shows, but the teen shows that we've watched recently that all have that element in them. Were they done the right way? Were they done the wrong way? Is it worth weighing a 12 and 13-year-old's opinion on whether it was done the right way or wrong way into that conversation? Not here,
I think
because I say fuck way too much. But also, if you're
I
a
think
creeper, fuck you.
It's also important, I think, to acknowledge that like people can have really strong reactions to things that sort of trigger like their experiences as a child. And so you want to be particularly cautious around that sort of thing. Like if someone says they don't want any romance in a game with kids, like don't assume you know why they're saying that. There could be a lot of reasons. And so like I think it is really important, particularly when dealing with stories about minors, to be aware, like be cautious about it, have conversations. If it needs to be fully off the table, then it's off the table. Like,
And if
you
it's
can
on the
still tell a
table
great
and it's
story.
kids on bikes, be fucking classy about it. Like,
and
be heavy with it. Be, you know, let's hold hands. Let's go to the movie.
And make sure you have that more nuanced. Have that.
Oh yeah.
So like, yes, that's the kind of romance
I'm gonna
we
make
need.
you a mixtape right now, Chuck.
Oh, I'm gonna go find a cassette player. Hang on, how long is the vintage store open?
But you know, and have that more nuanced conversation. Of like, you know, what does this look like? What is okay here? And yeah, because it's definitely it's worth it, because it can, especially in a longer game. I mean, I think it adds a lot to have those kinds of interpersonal relationships and to have them develop in natural ways. If a couple of characters just seem like something is there, you know, to be able to explore that as part of the story, I think is great. So I think a lot of times, again, especially in longer games, I think it's worth having a more complex conversation about like what's okay, having the regular check-ins, you know, in case people change how they're feeling for better or worse. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's an interesting topic, and I think it's interesting. I think it's definitely worthwhile to take the time and define what romance means, even further than the 8 to 10 questions that get broken down on the Monty Cook sheet. The just because to me that's similar to when Rook was talking before, that they've got exploration down on there. That's something I routinely ask people when I meet people in D&D. What does
What the hell is
pillar
exploration mean to you?
right? Because
Mhm.
you know, Rook breaks it down into exploration versus like mysteries and other stuff, and I'm like, but that's part of exploration, you know. And I know, well, in
Mhm.
my world it's this, in my world it's that,
Mhm.
right? It's a the romance is a very nuanced topic like
Mhm.
that, and so defining what it is, and you know, rather than, and then yeah, we're throwing this on throwing this off of the table. Okay, I need to be really specific about what I'm not supposed to be
Yeah.
innuendos are off the table, you know. It is all exactly what it is, and just be clear about everything, and that way everybody's can go in there, have a good, happy, easy session, you know?
Absolutely. Nothing is necessarily clearly defined. Everything is conceptual.
Mhm.
Exploration, etc., romance, that's all conceptual. So it can differ from person to person to person. So absolutely.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
for
So
sure.
at this table, what does
Mhm.
this stuff? What does this stuff mean? So basically, we will wrap up this fun happy hour of talk with another reminder to have session zeros and talk to each other,
Yes.
talk to
God, how
your
many
DM,
times does that
talk to
come
your
up on this
players.
show?
I know. I know.
It's just,
Mhm.
it's so important because it's so overlooked
Yeah.
with so many
And
tables.
not just session 0, because that's the thing. That's why it comes up a lot, because there's so many, like, those check-ins, or like be talking to people between sessions, like, you know, just
I mean, and I think
listen to
that's,
people, get to know the people you're playing with, you know.
and not just at your table, in life. It really is. I mean, like, really. I mean, not in a formal session zero, but listen to people and talk to people and have conversations with people and get on the
Mhm.
same page. I think
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's the big thing. So, well, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to us ramble. Thank you for the people that sit in the middle seat on long
Somebody's got to do
haul
it.
airline flights. Um, Thank you to MJ for guesting with us this evening in that fine, fancy parka-like sweater.
So
It's so
cozy.
cozy. So warm.
Mhm.
And we wish you all good night. And remember, hit points are not required to enjoy a tasty beverage. Woo!
Yay!